The stars stretched across the void like a vast tapestry, glittering with the quiet indifference of a million distant suns. Among them, a single vessel moved with a confidence that seemed almost alive, cutting through the dark with a presence that made seasoned scouts in the Imperial fleet shiver in disbelief. No record, no intelligence report, no legend had prepared them for what they were seeing. The hull reflected starlight in a subtle shimmer, almost liquid in its movement, as though the ship itself bent the cosmos around it in recognition of its own defiance. Inside the ship, humans moved with a calm precision born from centuries of adaptation to impossible odds. Each hand, each footstep, carried the weight of experience and the audacity of survival. The vessel's corridors pulsed softly with a life of their own, light weaving along the walls like threads of consciousness, responding to thought, gesture, and breath. The crew had been forged in isolation beyond known space, in zones where physics itself became suggestion, and they bore the mark of that journey, not in scars, but in resonance, subtle and undeniable. The Empire's ships began to converge, their sensors straining against signals that bent reality. Weapons locks failed to stabilize, scanners returned paradoxes, and every captain in the approaching fleet felt a cold hesitation. This was not a warship they recognized. Its shape was familiar, yet impossible. Its power signature suggested a fleet in miniature, contained in a single vessel whose presence redefined scale. A low hum vibrated through the human ship, felt rather than heard, a signal to the crew that the Empire's scrutiny was both noticed and irrelevant. The humans had no fear, they carried in their minds and hearts the lessons of survival and the pride of defiance. Every eye glimmered with understanding, a recognition that they had faced forces that would have unmade entire worlds and returned intact. Outside, the Imperial commanders exchanged hurried commands, their voices tight with disbelief. Reports flickered across screens, indicating impossible energy readings. Gravitational distortions, and anomalies in the very fabric of space-time around the vessel. Yet still, the humans pressed forward, serene, resolute. They did not rush. They did not flee. They simply moved, and the stars themselves seemed to acknowledge their passage, bending and shining with an intensity that suggested recognition, even awe. As the first fleet vessels drew near, the human captain raised a hand, not in surrender, but in quiet greeting. The motion rippled through the ship, triggering a soft resonance that extended beyond the hull, brushing against approaching sensors like a living pulse. The fleet faltered, and for the first time, even the Empire felt the weight of humility. These were humans, yes, but not as they had imagined. They were something more. Something older, wiser, and unafraid, and through the corridors of the human vessel, a thought passed silently among the crew. The galaxy had prepared no welcome for them, yet here they were, stepping into history not as victims, not as footnotes, but as the force that would rewrite the rules. The stars watched. The Empire shivered. Humanity advanced. The fleet hesitated as the human vessel moved closer, its hull shimmering with subtle iridescence that seemed to absorb and refract the starlight. Every instrument aboard the Imperial ships flickered, registers spinning with impossible numbers that contradicted each other. As if reality itself struggled to describe what it observed. The humans did not speed, did not fire, did not signal, they simply advanced, calm and unwavering, their presence alone challenging centuries of galactic hierarchy. Within the ship, the crew moved with silent coordination, steps echoing faintly in corridors that bent at angles no architect had conceived. Panels glowed beneath their hands, responding to thought rather than touch, and every pulse of light traced a rhythm that spoke of knowledge beyond calculation. Their eyes reflected the stars, but also something deeper, awareness of realms no empire had charted, understanding forged in the crucible of space where time had no dominion. The Empire's commanders exchanged hurried signals, their voices tight with confusion and disbelief. Energy readings suggested power beyond comprehension, gravitational distortions warped their sensors, and the very air in their command centers felt heavy with tension. Attempts to classify the vessel failed. It existed in multiple states at once, a paradox of structure, energy, and intent. A low hum emanated from the human ship, subtle and penetrating, felt rather than heard. It brushed against approaching vessels like a tide of calm authority, unsettling their systems without violence. The crew moved as one, each aware of the ship's pulse and each other's thoughts, embodying discipline and adaptability honed beyond conventional warfare. The first admiral to break the silence issued a cautious challenge, a volley of sensor scans and probing pulses, but the responses returned were unintelligible, each reading bending the rules the Empire had relied upon for centuries. The humans had become an enigma, a force that defied categorization, their mastery of unknown technologies evident in the subtle distortions around them. As the Odyssey glided forward, the human captain surveyed the fleet with calm confidence. Every eye, every gesture, projected awareness without arrogance, restraint without fear. The Imperial crews felt a shiver, an unspoken acknowledgement that humanity had stepped into a realm that no hierarchy, no calculation, no history could contain. The stars themselves seemed to lean closer, and the void whispered as the humans advanced. They carried no weapon fire, yet their passage spoke of certainty, endurance, and the audacity of life that refused to be measured or subdued. The Empire could only watch, unable to anticipate, unprepared for the assertion of a species that would not yield, and so, the humans moved onward, quiet, relentless, their presence a testament to the defiance, intelligence, and courage that had always defined them, now amplified by the impossible journey through space and time. The human vessel drifted closer to the center of the Imperial formation, its hull glinting with a subtle, shifting luminescence that seemed almost alive. Every sensor on the approaching ship scrambled, producing readings that contradicted themselves, as though the universe itself resisted classification. Alien officers stared in disbelief at instruments that registered impossible energy signatures, gravimetric anomalies, and spatial distortions surrounding a single vessel. Inside, the crew moved with measured grace, their footsteps echoing faintly through corridors that bent and folded in ways no conventional design could explain. Light traced along the walls like living circuitry, responding instantly to thought, gesture, and the mere presence of the humans. Each crew member carried the quiet certainty of those who had survived beyond known space. Eyes reflecting the depth of experiences that no report, no legend, could convey. The Empire's admirals struggled to coordinate, issuing commands that failed to produce expected results. Their scanners returned conflicting data, their weapons arrays flickered with instability, and even communications were partially distorted as the human ship passed through the network of signals. A subtle pulse radiated from the vessel, felt rather than heard, brushing against approaching ships with an invisible force that unsettled equipment and nerves alike. The captain walked the bridge with quiet authority, observing the formations outside. The crew mirrored the ship's pulse, a synchronized hum of awareness. Each one attuned to the subtle changes in the vessel's energy and the faint echoes of the cosmos around them. They had learned to navigate realms that bent reality, to survive encounters that would unmake ordinary beings, and to carry themselves with the calm confidence of those who know the impossible is merely a threshold. As the Odyssey moved forward, the fleet faltered, unsure how to respond. No weapon fired. No aggressive maneuver succeeded. Every measure taken by the Empire seemed trivial against a presence that commanded space without aggression, that radiated authority without arrogance. The humans had become a statement, an assertion of existence and mastery that could not be ignored. Beyond the bridge windows, stars stretched and twinkled, distant nebulae casting ethereal light across the scene. The humans advanced silently, a testament to survival, intelligence, and the audacity to challenge the cosmos itself. The Empire could watch, but it could not comprehend. Humanity had crossed the impossible, and the galaxy was beginning to feel the weight of that truth. The Odyssey glided through the Imperial perimeter, its hull shimmering with an unearthly glow that cast long, shifting reflections across the dark void. Every approaching vessel faltered, their engines hesitating, weapons locks failing, sensors overwhelmed by energy readings that defied all known physics. The humans aboard moved with serene precision, their steps echoing faintly in corridors that twisted and folded in impossible geometries, as though the ship itself reshaped space around them. Light pulsed softly along panels and floors, responding to thought rather than touch, a living network of energy and awareness that resonated with the crew. Eyes glimmered with quiet certainty, minds synchronized with the ship, each movement deliberate, every decision informed by knowledge born from the void. They had survived realms that would have destroyed empires, confronted entities older than stars, and returned intact, carrying that understanding in every gesture. Outside, Imperial commanders struggled to comprehend the impossible. Scanners reported fluctuations in mass, energy signatures that flickered between existence and non-existence, and gravitational anomalies that bent the readings of entire fleets. Their attempts to maneuver, to flank, to intimidate, were met with subtle corrections from the Odyssey itself, as though the ship anticipated every calculation before it could be executed. The captain raised a hand, not in greeting, but in control. A soft, resonant pulse emanated through the hull, stretching outward into the fleet, brushing against shields and instruments like a quiet warning. The pulse conveyed authority without violence, presence without threat, yet every observer felt the unshakable truth: these humans were not ordinary. They were something the galaxy had not seen before, an assertion of will, intelligence, and endurance that reshaped the rules of engagement simply by existing. Crew members moved in unison, subtle threads of energy visible beneath their skin, connecting them to the ship and to each other. Every display lit with knowledge not yet catalogued, every console responded before touched, every calculation preempted by thought alone. They had become more than a crew. They were a force, an entity entwined with a vessel that defied reality, a living testament to humanity's resilience and ingenuity. As the Odyssey reached the central axis of the fleet, the stars beyond seemed to bend subtly. A cosmic acknowledgement of presence and purpose. The humans did not pause, yet no force dared challenge them. They advanced with the certainty of those who had crossed the impossible and returned unbroken, a beacon of defiance and intellect that no empire could ignore. The galaxy held its breath, and humanity moved onward. The Odyssey advanced deeper into the heart of the Imperial formation, its hull glowing with a subtle, liquid-like shimmer that seemed to ripple with the heartbeat of the crew inside. Sensors and instruments across the surrounding fleet struggled to stabilize, returning readings that oscillated between impossibility and contradiction. Alien officers whispered among themselves, eyes wide, as energy spikes and gravimetric anomalies distorted the space around the human vessel. Inside, the crew moved with calm efficiency, each step and gesture perfectly synchronized with the living pulse of the ship. Corridors bent and shifted as if obeying thought alone, walls folding to create paths that led simultaneously forward and elsewhere. Light traced along surfaces in intricate patterns, responding to the presence and focus of each crew member, illuminating displays that revealed layers of reality the galaxy had never mapped. The captain surveyed the fleets ahead, noting the hesitation etched across the faces of Imperial commanders. Every maneuver attempted against the Odyssey faltered. Every scan produced paradoxes, every weapon lock failed. The humans did not rush, did not retreat, and did not fire. They simply moved with a deliberate confidence that radiated control over the very laws of space around them. A low hum emanated from the vessel, vibrating through nearby ships, felt rather than heard. It carried information, warning, and authority simultaneously, unsettling instruments and nerves alike. The crew responded instinctively, a silent ballet of awareness, each member connected to the ship and to one another, anticipating and adjusting with a precision that transcended ordinary coordination. The human captain raised a hand, and the ship responded as one. Beams of iridescent light extending across the hull in geometric patterns that seemed to encode knowledge, judgment, and promise. Fleets recoiled, not in fear of attack, but in recognition of mastery beyond comprehension. Every observer felt the undeniable truth: humanity had returned from the void transformed, unbound by conventional understanding, a force reshaping the very rules of existence. Through the observation windows, distant nebulae painted the scene in colors unseen by most eyes, cosmic gas and dust refracting the ship's glow into radiant patterns. The humans advanced steadily, a testament to endurance, ingenuity, and defiance. The galaxy could only watch, humbled and astonished. As a species once underestimated now carried the weight of the impossible within their very presence, the Odyssey's pulse extended outward, touching fleets and stations alike, a silent proclamation of authority and potential. Humanity had arrived, and the galaxy would never mistake them for fragile again. The Odyssey reached the central void where the Imperial fleets had gathered, its hull radiating a subtle, living glow that bent starlight across every surface. Energy waves rippled outward, brushing against nearby vessels, causing instruments to flutter and shields to ripple. Every sensor attempted to quantify the impossible, yet failed. The humans aboard moved with serene precision. Each step, each gesture, perfectly synchronized with the ship, as if it were an extension of their very consciousness. The corridors of the vessel shifted and bent with silent grace, walls and floors folding at impossible angles to accommodate the flow of thought and action. Light pulsed along the panels like veins of energy, responding to mind and movement, illuminating the crew in patterns that suggested intelligence far beyond mere calculation. Every eye reflected stars, yet within them burned awareness of realms untouched by the Empire, knowledge harvested from the edges of existence where even cosmic entities paused in recognition. Imperial commanders shouted orders, their voices tight with disbelief and tension. Every maneuver, every attempt to flank or intimidate, was anticipated and neutralized by the humans' uncanny synchronization with the ship. Weapons systems failed to lock, shields fluctuated under invisible pressure, and communication networks stuttered against subtle distortions the vessel projected. The Odyssey did not attack, yet its presence alone reshaped the battlefield. The captain moved to the observation deck, standing before the vastness of the galaxy with the crew arrayed behind. A quiet pulse emanated from the ship, radiating outward in waves that bent space and light, touching distant fleets and stations alike. Every human aboard was attuned to it, a collective awareness that flowed through minds, through circuitry, through the very essence of the vessel. They were not just a ship. They were a singularity of human ingenuity, defiance, and will. Across the fleets, eyes widened in recognition. The humans had crossed thresholds no empire had dared approach, had survived encounters that would have annihilated others, and had returned not as victims, but as arbiters of power that could not be measured or contained. The stars themselves seemed to acknowledge the passage, bending subtly, shining with an intensity that whispered of wonder and caution. The captain raised a hand, and the ship responded in luminous patterns that stretched across its hull, a silent declaration of mastery. Humanity had arrived in full force, a species transformed and unyielding, asserting its place in a galaxy that had long underestimated it. The fleets froze, the Empire held its breath, and the void trembled with quiet recognition, and in that moment, the humans advanced not with violence, but with certainty, carrying the impossible in every heartbeat, every thought, every pulse of light. Humanity had returned, and nothing would ever be the same again.